Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet of Portsmouth City Council. I'm Gerald Van Jackson. I'm leader of the council and I chair this committee. Colleagues, I think probably everybody knows the rules in terms of being COVID safe. So I'm glad to see everybody sitting in a green spot and therefore with decent amount of social distancing. This meeting is live streamed, so people will be seen. If there is a fire alarm, we have been relocated, so we wouldn't be in Guildhall Square. We're around the corner at King Henry Street by the University Park building. I think that is everything else so far. So shall we quickly just run around the room and so that everybody knows who everybody is and what role you have to play here. So if we move from my right and we'll go around. Christopher.
Chris Ward, Director of Finance.
Sophie Mallon, Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Tristan in the cheap seats.
Tristan Samuels, Director of Regeneration.
Nicole. So Nicole is here to see what we get up to. Paul.
Paul Fielding, Assistant Director for Housing, presenting the report on homelessness and rough sleeping strategy.
Ian Maguire, Assistant Director for Planning and Economic Growth.
Fernando.
Fernando Lopes, Principal Engineer, Regen.
Joe Hammond, Road Safety Officer from the Safer Travel Team.
Joe, thank you. You can wiggle the microphone so it comes to you so you don't have to go to it. Michelle.
Michelle Love, Safer Travel Manager from the Regeneration Service.
Karen Martin from Democratic Services.
Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Excellent, Chase.
Councillor Jason Fazackley, Cabinet Member for Health, Wellbeing and Adult Social Care. I'm here to give the apologies, apparently.
We'll get to that in a little bit.
Darren Sanders, Cabinet Member for Housing and Preventing Homelessness.
Hugh Mason, Cabinet Member for Planning Policy and City Development.
Ben Dowling, Cabinet Member for Culture, Leisure and Economic Development.
Lynn Stagg, Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation.
Thank you. Mr. Sage.
Mark Sage, Tackling Poverty Coordinator.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. Apologies. Jason, do you want to run through who we know who is not here?
Be an immense honour, Chair. We have 4 apologies for today. Councillor Dave Ashmore is unwell, Councillor Susie Horton, who's at a funeral, Councillor Chris Atwell, who's looking after a family member, and Councillor Kimberly Barrett, whose work commitments is in Winchester.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest? Nope. Minutes of previous meeting or record of decisions. Colleagues, are you happy with the minutes of the previous meeting? Agreed. Great, thank you. Okay, colleagues, thank you very much indeed for coming in to talk to us. Can you work on the basis that we've read the report and that you don't need to read it to us? If that's going to disappoint somebody, I apologise profusely, but do work on the basis, it might not be true, but do work on the basis that we have read the report, because I think we have. So, colleagues, economic development strategy, economic development, etc. Ian.
Thank you, Leader. This is a report back to give you an update on the performance of the Council's various different departments against the Economic Development Regeneration Strategy 2019 to 2036. We are now in the second year of this strategy. The report gives you a summary of the activities that have been carried out. At the beginning of the appendix, which is the bulk of the report, you can see the 6 targets which we monitor the 5 themes of the strategy and the performance of the Council's, and rather the performance of the City, supported by the Council, against those targets. Performance is going well overall, with a myriad of complex and well thought of schemes laid out in the following appendix. I am of course happy to take any questions, but this item is brought for you for information purposes only today.
Thanks. Ben.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Ian. I'll keep it very brief. I think I just want to draw people's attention to the targets that Ian's mentioned. And actually, I think it's a really positive picture because despite COVID and despite the challenges we faced over the last 2 years, we are actually exceeding proportionally those targets. If you consider it's a 15-year strategy and we're already well achieving a number of those targets. So for example, when it comes to number of residents in work, we wanted to create an extra 7,000 residents to be in work by 2036. We've only been 2 years into the strategy and we're already at 31% of the target to achieve. Now, I think there's two ways of looking at it. We can either say that, isn't it brilliant that we're doing so well, or we can say, actually, have we been too unambitious in terms of our targets? But actually, I think it's a bit of both. It's partly reflective of some really good work that's been done both by the council but also by partners and by the private sector to boost the economic development of the city. But actually, we do need to be more ambitious. And I think we were hesitant about how ambitious we should be 2 years ago, and this report helps us paint a really positive picture going forward. So lots more work to do, but a really positive start to the strategy period.
Thanks, Ben. I happen to agree with you. I think this is good news that we're trying to not only look at driving up wages for people so that families have got decent amount to live on, but also drive up the proportion of people with decent qualifications, which is really important in the new economy, and also the amount of economic activity that they generate within the city. All of those things going in the right direction. So that's a good series of outcomes. So thanks for the report. Anybody else? No? Colleagues, you happy with this? Thank you very much. And can you pass on thanks to everybody involved, Ben and Ian, for this? Okay. Supporting people in financial hardship. Mark.
Thank you. So, Mark Sage, Tackling Poverty Coordinator, presenting the report on support for people in financial hardship. The report focuses on how we've used the funds provided by the Department of Work and Pensions since last winter to provide payments and essential items for people in financial hardship in Portsmouth. It outlines in section 3 the different tranches of funding that have been available to us, including the most recent grant, the Household Support Fund, which was announced on the 6th of October. The Council's used its full allocation of funding that's been available between November last year and September this year, which was just over £1.9 million. And the table at 4.1 outlines how those funds have been used. And you'll note that we've been able to keep administration costs at under 3% and maximise the value of help given to people in Portsmouth. That was possible because of contributions from teams across the council, particularly Children's Services and Education and the Housing, Neighbourhoods and Building Services Directorates, who put in a huge amount of work to design and deliver those schemes. And very importantly, our voluntary sector partners, especially our partnership with the Hive Portsmouth, who enable us to deliver the discretionary grant scheme, and our work with the Environment Centre under Switched On Portsmouth. So Section 8 covers the new round of funding from DWP. This is the Household Support Fund. Under that, Portsmouth can receive up to 1.89 million until the end of March next year. The table there at 8.3 shows the funds that we've allocated and the funds that we've held in reserve at this stage so that we can see how the need in the city develops as winter hits, as we move into a new phase of our COVID response, and then we'll use those remaining funds to provide additional funding to the schemes listed if the demand is higher, or to develop additional provision to meet those needs. Section 9 just highlights the fact that although it's a really important grant, it's only part of the assistance for people in financial hardship in Portsmouth. And the really important message to residents is still, if you're worried about money, there's free and independent money advice available in Portsmouth that can help you to ensure you receive everything you're entitled to, including these funds if appropriate. Find ways to reduce your household bills and to get help with any unmanageable debt. So all of that information is on the Council's website if you search for money advice. We know lots of people will be worried about money this winter, and Christmas is often a pressure on household budgets. So the Council's working with our partners to ensure that people in financial hardship can access the help they need. I'm happy to take questions, of course. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I think it's an area where we should be particularly proud that the City Council didn't follow the government's lead, but followed Marcus Rashford's lead in making sure that we did provide tokens for families with kids on free school meals over the half-term and holiday periods, and I think that was absolutely the right thing to do. And also put in money into lots of different areas. The bit that really worries me is the £20 reduction per week in universal credit that's come in recently will hit a lot of families very badly. I'm pleased they've made a variation in terms of the taper for people who work, but it will hit families very hard, and my understanding is that the government has given us this money, but it's only 10% of what they've cut from families on universal credit. So they're taking 90% back from families on very, very low incomes and giving us a little bit. And that means an awful lot of families will have a very difficult Christmas. So I think this has been a really good scheme that's been enormously helpful to a lot of people. But we do need the government to get the baseline right and get benefits to the correct level to make sure that families have the ability to bring up their kids. Colleagues, anybody else? Nope, okay. Well, thanks very much indeed for that, much appreciated. Okay, moving on. Homelessness, Paul.
Thank you. The purpose of the report, as stated, is to outline the process for creating a new single homelessness and rough sleeping strategy for the city. We do have a statutory duty to have a homelessness strategy, and latterly the government have required us to have link that in with rough sleeping. So this report outlines the process of bringing those two together and creating a single homelessness and rough sleeping strategy. We will begin by undertaking a review of the existing services so that we know what that strategy looks like, and then the plan for that is laid out in section 5 of the report. But a specific point to raise is, whilst the existing homelessness strategy is covered us until 23, the street homelessness and rough sleeping partnership strategy ended in 2020, so we're proposing that we will bring forward before the end of this municipal year an update which will act as an interim document on that rough sleeping work, and that will take us through until the new homelessness and rough sleeping strategy is produced. So the recommendations, as in the report, is that you approve the plan to create that new overarching strategy and approve the option to update the operational elements of the street homelessness and rough sleeping strategy this year, as outlined in section 6 of the report. Thank you.
Thanks. Darren.
Thanks, Gerald. I would support us progressing with both of the recommendations, but also to understand that the context in which this is being done is completely revolutionary, in the sense that we've done a full change to where we were 3 years ago. Where we were 3 years ago, we had a rough sleeping strategy that was focusing on enforcement, not support. We changed that. There was no overarching coordinating group to help guide us through what is potentially a minefield. We changed that. And we now have a system that is recognised nationally as one of the best in the country. We keep working not only with the Department for Levelling Up and Housing and Communities, but also keep getting incredible amounts of money from them, frankly, because we are so good. And that has changed people's lives. And will continue to change people's lives through a balanced and very liberal approach, which unbelievably seems to work, which is fantastically good. The next stage is to deal with not providing the buildings, because we provide the buildings, but also to deal with many of the wiring issues. How we can link into some of the stuff that Mark talked about earlier on in terms of dealing with financial hardship. How we can actually provide integrated health support as well as financial support as well. And crucially, how we can actually prevent homelessness happening in the first place. The government has a rough sleeping strategy, which is to remove all rough sleepers by the end of this Parliament. I think we've told them that is for the birds, frankly. But what none of us want is to be back here in 2 years' time. you've eliminated them in 2024 and they're all back in 2026 is a bit nuts as a policy. So we've focused very hard with them on preventing homelessness, work to preventing homelessness, everything from the mediation strategy for private sector that we've brought in to provide private rented accommodation, to provide support. Everything is geared towards preventing homelessness, and I'm delighted that the government is finally listening to us after a year of banging up their door about it, which is great news. This is a sensationally good package, sensationally good work, and I hope colleagues will give us the space to actually complete the work and do the wiring so we can continue to change lives forever. Thank you.
Thanks. I always found it a bit bizarre that we had a homelessness strategy and a rough sleepers strategy, and actually putting them together, I think, is plain bleeding common sense.
Gerald, this is one of the bonkers legal distinctions between the two that should be eradicated now.
Okay, this seems to be extremely sensible. I think it's one of the success stories of the pandemic was the way in which we got people in and off the streets. It was quite worrying about the very large numbers of people we had to house. But I think it's also been a really good piece of work that we've had to be able to find accommodation for those people around the city in different places. So there is less need for people to sleep rough. And I think we have to be clear that there is no need in Portsmouth for people to sleep rough. But actually we've got to respect the fact that there are people for whom things are very, very difficult in terms of their mental health or in terms of substance misuse, and having a range of different options to meet different people's needs. So it's not one size fits all, works much better, and I think that's been a really good piece of work. So congratulations to everybody. The other thing that struck me is that Paul has been out and bought 3 former student accommodation blocks, and we've been offered a 4th, and clearly private developers are building too much of this stuff in the city because they can't get students to fill it, and then they'd have to sell them to us. So any developer listening, there is a glut on the market already. Okay, colleagues, you happy with this report? Yes. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, Fernando, welcome. Your roundabouts.
Thank you, Councillor. Good afternoon, Councillors. The purpose of this report is to provide an update of consultation results and next steps moving forward for Rodmore Post Regions per roundabout on the CHRT program, South East Hampshire Rapid Transit. Portsmouth City Council recently engaged with local business, ward members and people who travel through Rodmore Post Regions per to understand how we can implement these improvements. The focus was on ways to improve the bus journey times. Following the consultation results, we are informing Cabinet that the project team will proceed to the final design and necessary TROs, and we will return to Cabinet or /TNT with permission to start build and approve the TROs. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much indeed, Lynn.
Thank you. Just a quick background. We bid for money to improve bus reliability, bus journeys into the city from outside the area. So from Fareham, Gosport, Waterlooville and Havant, and it's creating a network of direct bus priority routes so to improve journey reliability, but also making it easier and safer for passengers. And also it's incorporating improvements that benefit cyclists and pedestrians as well. These 3 roundabouts are where lots of roads come together, obviously. The one at Redmore roundabout, it's serving the city, but it's also serving the port, into and out of the port. Portsbridge can be a nightmare at times because of congestion. So the idea is to bring in bus gates. I mean, it's not a physical gate, but it's buses get priority to go through. And hopefully we'll cut down on the amount of traffic that is building up. And we're also, the aim of this really ultimately is to get as many people out of cars as possible. possible and to change to using public transport, because that is a more efficient way of travelling and it's much better for the environment. The team have worked really hard on this. They've worked with ward councillors, with local residents, with businesses, and also with people like the Cycle Forum. So it's been really well researched and consulted, because ward councillors, after all, are the ones who know their areas best, and they came up with a number of improvements, changes, and that have been incorporated into this. And I would like to thank Fernando and his team, because they've worked really hard on this. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lynn. Colleagues, any other thing? I'd just like to record my thanks to Fernando and team as well for doing this. Hopefully, this is going to make these really important junctions work better for everybody concerned, and therefore free up transport for people on buses, people in cars, people on foot, people on bikes, and I'm looking forward to the next set of these as they appear. Okay, Jason.
Well, I think I'm the only councillor here that's in one of the wards that's affected by this. Well, when I say all wards will ultimately be affected, but just to thank officers and obviously my colleague, Councillor Stagg, for the efforts that have gone into this. One very small pedantic point on the bottom of page 2, where it says changes made. The first one there is sigh lines, and I admit people may sigh at the junction sometimes, but it should be sight lines, but just a small point. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. Jason, you win the Pedant of the Day award so far, but there may be competition from Ben later. So let's move along. So everybody happy with that one? Great. Okay. Safer routes to schools. Joe.
Good afternoon. The purpose of this report is to outline the ways in which the Safer Travel team propose to spend the Safer Routes to School budget for the next financial year. The report outlines 3 sub-schemes, one at Burfields Road to facilitate improved cycle access to Admiral Lord Nelson School, one at New Road to improve general traffic behaviours and improve pedestrian access around the school, Newbridge Junior School, and finally a package of schemes for entry-level improvements and signing and lining, visibility and awareness treatments across the city. So there's a proposed list, although that is not prioritised and it's not final. It's a list of schemes that require further investigation. The proposals have been researched using analysis of casualty data available to us, and we have focused particularly on looking at where we can make significant changes to patterns of behaviour at very specific sites to make sure that the interventions that we're proposing are very likely to make the changes that we're looking to see on the streets. Any questions?
Okay, Lynn.
I think these are very important, obviously, because they're around schools. And it is, Joe's quite right about changing behaviour, because very often motorists, I use Burfields Road every day when I walk my dogs, and some of the driver behaviour is very questionable, to put it mildly, and it's a road which is quite narrow, and lots of children, obviously. It's one of 3 main routes to Admiral Lord Nelson, and people do pull out of side turnings and not look at the children, and also cyclists as well. New Road, there was an accident there a short while ago, and that is very, very close to the school as well. And I know Jason was a lollipop man there for quite a while, and it is quite a dangerous area, isn't it, Jason? So to any improvements there for the children would be really very welcome. One thing, it's not in the report, but I put it in here, but I would like to appeal to parents who actually park outside the schools within the wavy lines, and they cause potential problems left, right and centre. So it's not just the ordinary motorists, it is the parents of children being dropped off at the schools, and they need to actually be aware of the safety problems that they are causing. Thank you. Oh, and a thank you to the team, because again they've worked really hard on this.
Lynn, I have to say, having sat outside a school in the spring and watched people drop their kids off, it wasn't just on the wavy lines, people were parking in the most lunatic places to be able to do that. I understand that some parents feel that actually taking their kids to school by car is better for the kids because in terms of air pollution, but my understanding from Helen Atkinson, the Director of Public Health, is it's actually much worse for kids in terms of their breathing to be taken to school by car, and actually going by bike or by foot is much, much better for them. And I'm wondering whether we should have another go, maybe at the beginning of the next academic year, writing to people, or maybe at the beginning of the next summer term, writing to people in January to say, don't take your kids by car, cycle or walk when it's cold, wet and horrible, may not get as good an effect as doing it for the summer term, where it's nicer, drier, etc. But I think we need to be, particularly in primary schools, is working with parents so that they know the facts. Because I think there will be some parents who would say, actually, if that's the issue in terms of air pollution, I will walk with the kids, or they'll go by bike, and that could be really, really helpful.
I think for primary kids as well, they're at the height of the emissions from the cars, so they're getting it far worse than adults are.
Yeah, absolutely. Darren.
Thanks, Gerald. I think as a councillor for Baffins and...
I thought you were going to say as a father.
Gerald, you weren't supposed to say that, you know. But as a councillor for much of the area that's covered by Admiral Lord Nelson, this approach will be very, very welcome. Safety of children is absolutely essential. Both Lynn and I get a lot of people worried about safety around Admiral Lord Nelson and trying to encourage people to walk safely. So I think this will be hugely, hugely helpful to that. And also the people who live in the Copland bit of our ward, frankly, as well as in North East Fratton, will benefit from this as well. Newbridge I know as George Street, and I know as Northgate, as it's my old school. So, however, that had absolutely nothing to do with this being deserted, thank God. But I think it is really, but I know that area well, and I think the sort of treatments that are being proposed will be a huge, huge help for people both in Copner and in Fratton as well. And so I will support this greatly on behalf of some of my local residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jason, your microphone's on. Are you about to declare that you're a father as well?
No, I'm afraid I'm not. I can't declare that. But I can declare a response to what Councillor Stagg said, and I'm glad she raised that. Of course, quite happy to support both of these, but it just shows you, and I think the issue about me doing that voluntary school crossing patrol officer all those years ago, which I think Michelle might remember, when just before I think I was ousted as a councillor by those terrible UKIP rogues all those years ago. But yeah, this was a problem school. I mean, and just as an example, I think as being TNT portfolio at the time, the school approached us and said there was definitely a problem. They had no, it's a school crossing patrol officer, not a lollipop person. Okay, I was told off for that by the incumbent lady at the time, whose name I've forgotten. But it got me involved with the school. I ended up becoming a school governor, as well as acting as their volunteer crossing patrol officer for several months. But the number of times that I recall the late Jerry Oldfielders, who was the chair of governors and a teacher himself at Mayfield, came out along with the head teacher, who's, gosh, I've forgotten the lady's name. But we witnessed a number of incidents outside, several unfortunately with taxis, but it was a very dangerous area, and I'm glad that now something's being done. I was looking, in my defence, to try and do something at the time, but as I say, I was unfairly ousted by UKIP, but I'll try to forget that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. Councillor Susie Horton, welcome. I was about to say, was it a good funeral, but funerals never are.
Not usually, thank you.
And any interests you would wish to declare?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thanks. I think we've got the date of next meeting. Hugh.
Yes. Paragraph 4.3, you talk about giveaway markings could be introduced. Is there any reason why they should not be introduced?
Joe.
No, there's not. It's just a case of making sure that we have time to investigate all of the measures that we're putting forward thoroughly, and we sort of need to do that once we've established that these are the places that we're going to spend the funding. So I anticipate that will be the measure that we put forward.
Good, because I've seen it work very successfully elsewhere, and I think it's something which we should certainly do.
Okay. Colleagues, are you happy with that report? Thank you very much indeed. Next one, National Scheme for Auditor Appointment managed by PCSA. Michelle, is this you?
No, Councillor.
Oh.
I was going to leave.
Oh. Do you not want to talk to us about the appointment of auditors?
No.
All right.
I can talk to you more about walking to school, but...
No, you see, the great thing about this is the cost has come down by 50%, or more than 50%, and I wondered if that might be something with you, Michelle.
I'm sure I can spend it if the cost has gone down by 50%. If you'd like to reallocate the funding, I will make sure it goes to a good cause.
Excellent. Christopher.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leader. As you've mentioned, this concerns the appointment of our external auditors for the 5-year period to 23-24. It's for you for endorsement. It is a full council decision. The recommendation is that we do join the national scheme through public sector audit appointments, mainly on cost and quality grounds. I think I'll leave it at that, but happy to answer any questions.
Hugh.
Not a question, but a comment that I think that it is eminently sensible that we should work in cooperation with other local authorities through this public sector audit appointment scheme. And A, this saves us money, but B, it gets us auditors who are more skilled in the type of issues which arise in local government. So I think it's a very good scheme, and I'm very pleased to see that we are opting into it once again.
Thanks. I think we should probably write a letter to the LGA, because this was a negotiation done through the LGA to abolish the Audit Commission and get a more sensible system going, which was much, much cheaper. So we have saved our membership subs at the LGA many times over by being part of this, so I would completely endorse this. Colleagues, you happy with that? Excellent. Okay. Treasury Management Midterm, Chris.
Thank you, Leader. Again, this is a noting report to you, but it's part of best practice for the Council to report on its Treasury activities at the midpoint through the year. The report sets out that the Council has adhered to its Treasury management policy that was approved back in March, and it's stayed within all of the indicators that were set at that point. Any questions?
Hugh?
Once again, I commend this because I think we're in a situation where we're faced with a tremendous amount of uncertainty in the whole of the economy, and especially in this area of interest rates and bank rates, as is noted in the report. And so I think that the very prudent line which has been taken, that no borrowing has been undertaken, and we've been very prudent with this area, is by far the best way forward, and I commend it.
Thanks. And it seems that if we're borrowing for 50 years at 2%, that's an incredibly good rate of interest, and that gives us significant flexibility to be able to invest in the future of the city. And it's been great that we have been doing that, and things like buying back council houses, purchasing Lakeside, etc. And I'm looking forward to carrying that on in the budget that's coming to the council in February. Okay, happy with this report, everybody? Fine. Finally, Chris, revenue budget monitoring, 2021-22, quarter 2.
Thank you, Leader. Not quite such a positive report as the previous two. This is the Council's in-year budget position for the half year, so second quarter, and it's a forecast, don't forget, so it's not an actual at this stage, but it's a forecast for the end of the financial year this year. The forecast at present is for a overspend of just over £1 million. Probably important to recognise, actually, that the council still has a significant impact from COVID, or certainly in financial terms, and you'll see from the report that in order to contain the position
to just over £1 million, the council is actually drawing on a couple of its contingencies. One is for COVID-19 costs in excess of 10 million for this year, so really, really significant. A large proportion of that obviously is the lost income from the commercial ferry port, but equally there are still spending pressures related to COVID in both adults and children's social care. And there are some what we describe as windfall costs, again, that will be funded from the contingency in this year, largely related to items such as reductions in the amount of income that we receive for housing benefits subsidy. In addition to that, in order to contain the position, members, you will know that we are drawing down on the cabinet and portfolio reserves, which obviously is part of the council's financial regime, which is that if there is a forecast overspend in portfolio areas, then the first port of call is for any reserves that are held by that portfolio to help manage the overall position. But in overall terms, forecast position is just over £1 million, but there are a series of actions that are underway and being developed in order to manage that position down by the end of the year. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, and I'm sure portfolio holders will be taking this on board and taking action to make sure that overspends are addressed. Okay, colleagues, anybody else? At which point? No, so thanks very much indeed for that, Chris, and that is the end of the meeting. Thank you. And probably everybody's got lots of time now left in their diaries.